What gets you to $500,000 in gross sales is not going to get you to $5 million. Very different way to run a business. My name is Stephen Pope, and I'm the founder of My Amazon Guy, and I've grown a lot of businesses in my e-commerce career. There's a lot of questions that I'm going to go through in this conversation with you to help make you think about like where your growing pains are going to come from as you start to consider to scale. For example, you're going to have 3 or 5 SKUs when you're doing 500K in sales. Maybe you need 50 SKUs to get to 5 million. Many questions like that will be discussed. One of the things I want to first talk about, though, is people. So every CEO ever sets the foundation of the culture of their company, and nobody else can control culture like the leader. When you start to build a bigger business, you're going to have to set the tone of that culture. You know, when you're a solo shop just coming up with your entrepreneurial idea, that's not going to necessarily lead a team of people. So at My Amazon Guy, I've got 50 employees now, and I have had to be way smarter on who I've hired and how I look for talent than I've ever had to be. The sort of person I would hire 2 years ago was a straight out of college kid who was within 5 miles radius of my house because I ran the business out of my home, and I had them report into my basement right before the city marshal kicked us out because we had 10 cars in the cul-de-sac. Yeah, don't recommend that one. I since went remote, and I did that before COVID hit, and I had like a 6-month advantage over everybody trying to figure out how to run a business remote. So I was fortunate and lucky on that one. But like, the kids that I would hire back then, I was just trying to teach them my caveman fire. Hey, you need a job kind of conversations. And today, I'm hiring a completely different set of people. Just as one example, I'll show you my leadership page here. I have completely redone my entire leadership infrastructure in the last 60 days. So take my new CTO hire, Chief Technology Officer, Nick. So Nick, I hired him and promoted him into the CTO role this last weekend, and he's got a master's degree from MIT, right? And he sold his Amazon business to a large company for more than 8 figures. So that's the sort of talent I'm hiring today. And as you scroll through my leadership page, you will see a lot more senior tenured experience. Then I get to have fun things like, when I first started my company, I wouldn't have necessarily had my family with me. They would have thought I was crazy and wouldn't have touched it, right? But nowadays, my father, he runs our sales funnel. So if you decide to look at hiring my Amazon Guy, you'll get on a phone call with Dan Pope. He used to be he's a retired weatherman from Utah. So it's a completely different set of people that you look at hiring and think about. Even just in the last few months, as I've started to really scale my business, one of the mistakes that I made as a business owner was I tried to do everything, right? So like I have a lot of skills, but I also have a deficit, right? So my skill is I'm an architect. I can like do any job at my company, like literally any job in my company, I can do it. I didn't say I would be an A at it. I didn't say I would be exceptional at it. I just said I could do it, right? And so architects make great leaders of companies because they can create foundations and processes and stuff. Now, here's the problem. As a leader who could do anything, what did I fail to do? I failed to hire other leaders, right? So like I did not build a leadership team, and I'm trying to urgently correct that, right? And so as I try and put on the big boy britches of being a founder and CEO and worrying about foundational relationship building and nurturing conversations with my network, which is the most valuable thing I can do today as a founder, I have to rely upon an operations team management to solve the problems of my company's day-to-day weeds, right? And letting go of the reins on that has been very difficult. Very, very difficult. I could not tell you how difficult it has been. Very necessary and growing pain, and obviously a great problem to have by any stretch. So don't make the mistake of doing everything yourself. One of the most important things I could express in my video today. The late motivational speaker, Jim Rohn, is often quoted as saying, "You're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with." So in business, you're the average of those in your support system, right? And so I would love to be the average of MIT Nick, right? Like, and who sold his business. Like, that makes a whole different ball game having a person in my organization like that, who has been in my shoes before, who has grown a business and seen it flourish, right? So like, I have to battle things like imposter syndrome. Like, can I actually do this, right? And as you go from that 500K mark to 1 million to 2 million to 5 million, you will also very likely battle that imposter syndrome. You also have to consider the culture of a quality workforce, right? Like, how do I build a non-corporate business culture remotely in this day and age, and also make it the fun, sexy agency world, right? Without the snack wall, or without the, I don't drink alcohol, but the beers on Friday afternoon, right? Like, how do I build all of those things together to run my culture? And because at an agency, workload is always at an all-time high, right? Like, every agency ever has one or two problems. Either they don't have enough clients or they have too many clients, right? And a successful agency, and I would like to say I have a successful agency, we have a very hot sales funnel right now, and we are massive growing pains. And so we've talked with our employees as well as our clients and said, hey, we appreciate your patience as we go through this metamorphosis, but here is the things that you're going to gain from it if you stick with us, right? I went from one account director on 160 accounts last year to 4 account directors and a chief technology officer, and it's a massive difference. But it takes time to build those sort of things, months and whatnot. And so for an e-commerce business, and I know most of you watching this are running your own Amazon business, and I talk a little bit about my agency world because it's still applicable, because you're going to run into those same challenges when you're trying to build up that culture of a quality workforce, who you hire and how you hire and whatnot. So I got an email yesterday, and man, I got to tell you guys, like, there has been more checks off of my bucket list in the last 3 months than there has been in the last 3 years, just due to the massive growth and everything we're handling right now. And this very much was one of them. I got an email, and they asked me this question, and I responded in depth. Like, I gave several paragraphs of explanation to answer this random stranger on the internet who somehow got my email address. I don't even know how, right? And he responded back and he said, "Was that really Stephen Pope responding?" And I just was like, whoa, there's a new status level, right? Like, when there's a question of whether the CEO or founder is actually the one responding. Because like most of you guys know, right? Like, if you send an email to Jeff@Amazon.com, it goes to Jeff Bezos's original email address. And I don't think Jeff has enough time to read the probably several 100,000 emails that he gets at that email address each week. Though the rumor is that he did for the longest time. And to be honest, guys, like, I have dreamt of hiring an email wizard, right, to make my inbox get to 0 unread. But by the way, I have a great video on running a 0 unread inbox, because if you don't clear out your inbox, you are going to miss so much stuff. There's so many things that you're going to be able to do better if you have a 0 unread inbox. So watch that video. We'll link to it. Because that 0 unread inbox is a great concept. It will change your email methodology forever. But so I've had to change the sort of emails that I get, and consider, and I'm pulling away from running the operations and ceding control of operations to do what I think I'm best at, right? Like the thing that I think I'm best at is attracting a customer. I'm a marketer. And the CMO hat fits the best on my head, probably. I feel like my content is resonating today more than it ever has. I'll be honest, I don't know what changed from December to February of this year or March of this year, but I got to tell you, it's massively changed. And I've had a long investment into understanding my content and upgrading the tools and paying money for thumbnails, for crying out loud. It's just weird stuff like that. But in addition to that, I've had to change where I spend my time, right? Like I've had to, I've gone from the old school, building content on a whim, where I just get 2 or 3 clients that ask me the same question, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, I'm just tired of answering this question. I'll just make a video and then I'll send it to everybody, and then I loaded it to YouTube because it was a common question and everybody asked for it, right? And now I'm being a little bit more methodical. I'm still pretty off the cuff. That's always going to be my style, right? Like I do a weekly video series on Q&A, live Q&A. I've done 4 of them so far. We started it on Tuesdays. We've shifted it to Fridays, so we'll have this on Fridays at noon, ongoing. And I started a weekend rant series to go into just talk about whatever I want to rant about at any particular time, and I shoot those on my cell phone. It's very, very different style for me. But if you could gross, $5 million off of any business model, you might actually still be broke, right? But you could gross $500K and make $100K profit. And so like, which of those 2 businesses would you rather run? Now, obviously the $5 million business, even if it had a $0 EBITDA or profit or whatever, it could probably still sell for more than $100K in profit for that $500K business. But one of those is way easier to run, and you got to really consider some of those things that you're looking for, right? So it's a very different mentality and culture and everything you're thinking about, right? So you focus on the nurturing of the tactical work when you're first starting out, and okay, I just got to get stuff done, got to iterate the day-to-day grunt work, but like once you hit a certain peak, you have to pivot where you spend time, and there's like some major brick walls that will be placed in front of you that you're just like, how do I get around this? How do I still do the grunt work, the day-to-day operations, but also work on the business and not in the business, as they say? And that's not easy to do, right? Like when you try and take a company from 5 million to 10 million, it's probably even worse. I think that's actually the largest entrepreneurial barrier is from that 5 mil to 10 mil mark. But in any case, I've been live on more than a dozen other podcasts in the last 2 months. I'm going to be live on Helium 10. The Serious Sellers Summit, like all of these very, very popular Amazon podcasts. I've been on so many of them of late. It's kind of almost overwhelming. All right, so switching subjects here. So liabilities and risks. Those are the next things you got to consider when your business is getting bigger. Like those things go drastically up, right? So like when I'll give you an Amazon example. If you want to launch in Canada right now, you don't have to worry about taxes until you gross a certain number. And I can't remember the number off the top of my head, but I want to say it's 50,000 or something like that. And so like you don't even have to worry about filing for some of those international taxes and stuff until you hit a certain level. But then your liabilities and your risks and your taxes and all those things start piling up and up. You got to get things like product insurance, right? Most of us probably don't have product insurance if you're watching this, but you might want to consider it. Or business insurance, right? You got business insurance in place. Those are sort of the things that you got to consider, because as you get bigger, you actually get more responsibility, not less. You delegate more, don't get me wrong, but like you have way more pressure, way more responsibilities to think about. Like just take payroll, for example. So right now, I'm not personally aware of a great way to run international payroll with like automation and affordably, right? So like I use Gusto for my domestic payroll, and it's extremely convenient and dirt cheap, right? Like you're paying $40 a month plus like $6 a head to run basic domestic United States payroll. But internationally, I'm currently using Payoneer and PayPal. And I got to tell you, and I like to use Payoneer because I'm trying to reduce the fees that my employees, through going from USD to Philippines currency and whatever else. But Payoneer is kind of hot garbage, guys. Like it is. I mean, like my employees are constantly getting their money held up for no reason whatsoever, and it doesn't go through instantaneously. And so, like my team is aggressively seeking out international payroll options. We're taking a look at Veeam, and we're trying to figure that out. We looked at Ping Pong, but like I'm not sure that somebody has actually built an international payroll system to the likes of a domestic Gusto. Like I'm not really certain that that's been done, because I've been trying to find it. So payroll and those kinds of complications can add up. As you get bigger as a company, you also might need to take on a partner, right? I'm the sole owner of my Amazon guy, and also the sole owner of my wine glass brand, Momster. But I got to tell you, I've definitely considered and vetted taking on partners over the years and thought about like what that would look like and who would own what. And I haven't had to. I've been successful just doing my thing. But some of you may find it easier to go bigger with a partner. Maybe one of you guys is a marketer like me, and then the other guy is the operations dude who maybe has visited China or has, been around the block a few times with the manufacturing runs, right? So those are the sort of things that you have to think about as you're trying to consider upgrading. And what I like to say is leveling up your company. And so if we broke that down a little bit, conceptually speaking, there's really three things you need to succeed as a company. Number one, you need finance. Number two, marketing. And number three, operations. And I also have a great video where I break down these three things in depth. So I'll spare you from going into the full depth here, but I will say in a kind of quick summary, watch that video next if you will. If you get a passing grade in all three, your business succeeds. If you have one area, though, that you're exceptional in, your business will be profitable, right? So if you're a wizard with the Excel sheets and finance, that's good enough. And if your marketing just gets enough customers in the door and operates just at enough of a level, you'll be okay. But if you are more than exceptional in more than one of those areas, then you've got a phenomenal company, right? And so I'm trying to take my operations level and try and level it up, right? Like that's absolutely where I feel weakest right now in those three areas. Even though I feel like I'm way ahead of my competition, I still, structurally speaking, see the complications, the complexities of running an Amazon business, let alone an agency. Agencies are hard to run, guys. Really, really hard to run, especially at scale, because there's just so many moving parts. Like we do so many aspects of running a business, from growing traffic to improving conversion rates. We deal with SEO, PPC. We deal with the most complicated catalog problems ever, right? And because I've had to deal with all those things, I can go live in a weekly Q&A session and literally answer almost any Amazon question because I've seen everything across 160 accounts, right? Like it's just amazing how many problems you run into when you run a business on Amazon. Like just whether it's stupid, silly things like pesticides gating, or any of the other challenges like hazmat, or you need a certificate of analysis to even sell in the supplements category these days. Like there's just so many different things and complications. And, and speaking of SEO and PPC, like you have your own company website and your own Amazon business listings. that you'll actually have to invest into search engine optimization, right? So like, how many of us want to just run a quick automatic PPC campaign and check it in? Not going to work, right? Like you actually, when you're trying to scale your company from 500K to 5 mil, you actually have to build a community, right? Like you got to build some search engine optimization content and build a community and solve a problem that's unique that nobody else is talking about or doing, right? So like we do things that nobody else does to solve the constraints that everybody runs into. It's very, very complex. We do probably, I've had to take the ground that we defend as an agency and shrink it the larger we got, and that's not pleasurable to do, right? Like we tried to take on video editing, and that was a bad idea. We don't advertise this, but we also have Google ads and website builds and other stuff like that. But we're not a 10 out of 10 on those questions. We're 10 out of 10 on all things Amazon. And clients ask us from time to time, hey, can you run me some Facebook ads? Hey, can you run Google ads to my website? I'm like, well, we can. We're not a 10 out of 10 on it, though. You sure you want us to do it? And you're like, yeah, we really love working with you. And so that's the challenge that agencies run into, and they have to learn to say no a little bit more. But like we don't take on any business to run Google ads or Facebook ads to Amazon right now because you can't track it. Like the beta programs to track advertising external ads into Amazon are garbage, right? Like how do you know like which ad somebody clicked on, the A ad or the B version? Because I always like to test ads. I want to know, like, was it this word that got more conversions? Was it this image? Was my targeting better when I targeted females? Was it better when I targeted males? And by the way, I think marketing should be polarizing. That was my last week's rant. Link to that here if you want to see my rants on how I think marketing should be polarizing. But in any case, like you got to think about things like finance. Let's talk a little more about that for a second. When you run a 500K business, like you could float it, side hustle it, run it out of your garage, your basement, and still have a full-time job. But if you want to get to a $5 million business, you might actually have to take out like a credit line. And so how are you going to buy $500,000 in your cost of goods, your products, and store them in a warehouse somewhere, or the raw materials or whatnot? How are you going to bankroll that? So that's a pretty big major step, right? When you have to go to the banks and say, hey, can I get some money? Maybe you got that $500,000 without, I don't know, filing a trademark, getting some intellectual property in-house. And we started filing trademarks to help out people. And quick plug here, you can buy a trademark from us for $775, and we'll file your trademark, and you can complete the entire brand registry in under 7 days. So if you don't have a trademark in place right now and you're trying to upgrade from a 500K business, this is your number one action item from today's video. Go over to myamazonguy.com and get a trademark today. And then the other things you got to think about when you're running a business is like when you first start out, you're looking at Alibaba, right? And we saw Alibaba's now integrated with other tools like Helium 10. They're like integrating straight into the Chrome extensions these days. So everybody is using Alibaba. Now, it's a cool tool. Don't get me wrong. It's like number one marketplace to buy stuff out of China. But, the items that you bought for a 500K business on Alibaba, sure, might have worked out. But 5 mil on Alibaba, not a chance. You're going to have to probably visit China. You're going to have close relationships with your Chinese manufacturers, which by the way, there's bribery and all kinds of fraud you got to deal with and understand the culture. Like that is the Chinese culture. And I'm not going to sugarcoat that one. It's brutal, right? Like I went to China. I went to the giant Canton Fair, overwhelmingly large buildings, I might say, like the largest building I've ever been in my entire life. Gigantic. And not just one of them. There was like 5 of them, right? By the way, the coolest thing I ever saw in China was a circus where they had dancing bears. It was quite entertaining, probably unethical. Don't see dancing bears in a circus in the United States these days, do you? Let alone, basically they're trying to get rid of elephants in circuses. So like the cultural norms and all of those translations of thought and ability and structural things are completely different in China. And you have to bridge those gaps. And if you don't have a sourcing expert on staff, that's going to be one of the first things you outsource, right? Like you will get taken for a ride. They will build your product and they'll do something to save 2 pennies on the manufacturing run. And you didn't pay for that inspection because it was the third run, right? Like, oh, I trust these guys now, right? And then you didn't pay for that inspection, and all of a sudden your entire, $1 million run of goods is completely ruined. And we talked with Norm of Lunch with Norm fame, and he told that story about how when he had this kind of wet wipe packaged good of some kind, they took out the liner in the package and it made all of the packages leak. Like literally could not sell the entire container load of product, completely wasted. And what a mistake, or what a big problem that would be to have if you didn't run that inspection. So when you get to that scale, your risk goes up. And by the way, I honestly truly believe we as American sellers in the US on Amazon need to manufacture in the United States. We've got to figure out how to crack this, guys. Like I'm talking to everybody I know in my network for the past 5 years and still haven't cracked this myself. I need help. I need you guys to rally around me, to tell me and teach me and share like what secrets you guys have to make stuff in America, because we need to cut China out. When the Chinese come in from the left and they're beating you down on commodity pricing, they're going to win, and they're going to go direct to consumer and they're going to cut you out. So the only defense that you have is to make stuff in America. We got to figure that one out. There really isn't a lot of B2C manufacturing in the States right now. It's a big freaking challenge. That's a problem. But exiting my USA rant, the solutions, the delegation, the outsourcing, the systems and the processes and all of those things that you have to hire for, build, achieve, who you are, what you are, all of these things are completely different as you try and upgrade to a $5 million company. Maybe you have to have a physical location. Maybe you got to get that warehouse finally you've been talking about. Maybe you got to invest in the machines that you were currently using from your manufacturer. Maybe you got to build them yourself. Maybe you got to go build a manufacturer plant. I would love to have vertical control of a manufacturer plant, end-to-end, raw resource to end good. I dream of this. I dream of having the opportunity to control my own destiny from end to end without having to rely upon anybody. It's unrealistic. It's an aspiration, but it's definitely something I desire. So that's my content for today, talking about how to go from a $500K to $1 million business. If you like what you hear, you want to hear more, hit that subscribe button. Check us out over at myamazonguy.com if you need some Amazon consulting, and hit this playlist with other content where we talk about all things and how to improve your sales on Amazon.